The venerable courtroom, usually a bastion of controlled formality, dissolved into a stunned and profound silence. All eyes, ranging from the cynical reporters in the press gallery to the seasoned lawyers flanking the defense table, were fixed on the young black woman standing before the elevated bench. Her absolute composure, a study in quiet determination, was a blinding contrast to the torrent of scorn that had been heaped upon her just moments before Judge Bartholomew Patterson, notorious across the Chicago circuit for his razor-sharp tongue and openly condescending attitude toward those he deemed inferior, had dedicated the previous 20 minutes to systematically tearing her down, mocking her audacity to represent herself in a small claims case that carried such devastating real-world implications. "You truly believe you can hoodwink this court, young lady?" he had sneered, his booming, theatrical laughter reverberating off the polished oak paneling. "A mere child playing dress-up as an advocate? This, I assure you, is a courtroom of law, not the stage for a high school play." But then, she had begun to speak, her voice steady, perfectly modulated, and unervingly clear. She commenced the systematic dissection of the prosecution's flimsy case, her comprehensive knowledge of complex legal precedents and her razor-sharp, devastatingly logical arguments leaving the veteran judge and the highly paid, seasoned defense attorneys utterly dumbfounded. A wave of audible gasps rippled across the audience as it became horrifyingly apparent to all that this teenager was no ordinary, easily intimidated defendant. The judge's previously smug, self-satisfied expression visibly melted, rapidly replaced by a mixture of deep confusion and escalating unease. "I object!" One of the principal prosecutors, a middle-aged man named Davison, abruptly interjected, his face flushed scarlet with frustration and professional humiliation. "Your Honor, I have compelling reason to believe this individual is not in fact who she purports to be." The young woman slowly turned her piercing gaze, which seemed to hold the weight of years of study, toward the frantic prosecutor and offered a faint, almost pitying smile. "Your Honor," she stated, never breaking eye contact, "I am fully prepared to provide my complete, verified credentials if required, but I assure the court that every single word I have uttered is wholly grounded in established statutory law and precedent. With the court's leave, shall we continue?" Judge Patterson's florid face had taken on a deep, almost painful shade of crimson. "Who exactly are you?" he demanded, the forced authority cracking in his voice under the overwhelming weight of his disbelief. The girl reached deliberately into the worn leather satchel resting at her feet, carefully retrieved a pristine, official-looking document folded into thirds, and calmly handed it to the bewildered bailiff. The official paper was passed up to the judge. As his eyes skimmed the densely typed lines, his hands began to tremble noticeably. His mouth opened and closed in rapid succession, yet no coherent sound emerged. The entire audience waited, completely breathless, for the inevitable conclusion. Now, let us return to the genesis of this extraordinary confrontation. The entire story unfolded in the quiet, tree-lined suburbs south of Chicago, where 17-year-old Maya Brooks resided in a modest but comfortable home with her beloved grandmother, Clara. Maya was unequivocally no ordinary teenager. She was a certified child prodigy, one who had started devouring dense law textbooks for pleasure by the tender age of 7, and was adeptly debating complex constitutional issues with college students by the time she was 12. Despite the sheer force of her intellectual brilliance, she intentionally chose to maintain a deliberately low profile, utterly uninterested in the relentless attention that inevitably accompanied her staggering intelligence. Her grandmother, Clara, a retired schoolteacher whose wisdom Maya deeply respected, often stressed the profound importance of humility and the ethical responsibility of using her prodigious gifts exclusively for the greater good. One crisp autumn afternoon, while assisting her grandmother with the weekly grocery shopping at the corner store, Maya overheard a devastating conversation. A local single mother named Teresa was standing by the register, dissolved in tears, explaining to the sympathetic cashier that her landlord was cruelly evicting her and her 2 small children. "I have absolutely nowhere else to go," Teresa sobbed uncontrollably. "I've paid every last cent on time, but he claims I violated the lease agreement. I didn't. I swear to God I didn't." Maya's heart sank sharply in her chest. After the exchange, She quietly approached Teresa and gently inquired about the specifics of what had transpired. Teresa tearfully explained that her landlord, a man named Reynolds, was maliciously claiming she had far too many people residing in the small apartment. "It's only me and my babies, always has been," Teresa insisted, her voice raw with indignation. "He's clearly lying because he wants to quickly raise the rent drastically for some new tenant." Maya's hyperanalytical mind immediately began to race. She asked Teresa if she had diligently kept copies of all her monthly rent payments and, critically, the original lease agreement. Teresa nodded, affirming that she had meticulously stored everything in an organized folder at home. Maya felt a powerful, undeniable spark of determination ignite within her. "Allow me to help you," she stated firmly, her expression resolute. "I strongly believe you have an extremely solid case." Teresa stared at her, her eyes wide with overwhelming disbelief. "But, you're just a kid." Maya simply offered a confident, knowing smile. "I've been told that exact thing before. Trust me." Over the course of the next few days, Maya meticulously pored over every one of Teresa's documents. The landlord's stated claims were not only inconsistent but riddled with blatant factual errors and procedural holes. She immediately drafted and sent a formal, sharply worded legal letter to the landlord, demanding that he immediately cease all eviction proceedings and threatening swift, serious legal action if he failed to comply. When the arrogant landlord contemptuously ignored her formal demand, Maya assisted Teresa in filing a case in the local small claims court. The word spread like wildfire throughout the close-knit neighborhood. The studious teenager who was always buried in her books was now fearlessly standing up for genuine justice. The case rapidly caught the attention of local reporters, and Maya's involvement became the sensationalized headline in every small-town news outlet. But not everyone in the community was impressed. Many openly questioned her qualifications. Others cruelly mocked the sheer absurdity of a teenager presuming to take on such a serious and complex legal matter. As the court date drew near, Teresa became consumed by increasing anxiety. "What if we lose, Maya? I don't have a single penny left to hire a real lawyer." Maya offered quiet reassurance, but deep down, she acutely recognized the stakes were astronomically high. This was far more than just Teresa's tenancy. This was about standing up decisively against systemic injustice and demonstrating once, and for all that age and skin color did not and should not define one's competence or capability. On the designated day of the hearing, the courtroom was completely packed. Spectators, photographers, reporters, and even a handful of curious local attorneys had come to watch the so-called child attorney in action. Maya, dressed immaculately in a plain navy blazer and a dark skirt, carried herself with a quiet, centered confidence that profoundly belied her youth. But the instant she stepped forward to begin her presentation, Judge Patterson aggressively interrupted her. "And who, pray tell, are you supposed to be?" he asked, his tone dripping with theatrical, patronizing condescension. "I am representing the plaintiff, Your Honor," Maya replied calmly, her voice completely devoid of emotion. The judge let out a loud, mocking chuckle, shaking his head slowly in theatrical disbelief. "You absolutely must be joking. Is this some sort of juvenile prank?" The room instantly filled with nervous whispers and stifled laughter. Maya stood her ground, her expression utterly unchanging, patiently enduring Judge Patterson's continued verbal assault as he viciously ridiculed her, questioned her professional credibility, and made pointed, insulting remarks about how kids these days utterly failed to grasp the gravitas of legal proceedings. Maya endured it all in absolute silence, meticulously waiting for the precise moment to deploy her carefully prepared defense. When the opportunity finally presented itself, she presented her case with devastating precision and crystalline clarity, citing obscure legal precedents and exposing the landlord's multitude of calculated lies. The room grew eerily quiet as she spoke, her words commanding immediate attention and hard-won respect. But the instant that left absolutely everyone speechless was the moment she revealed her true, astonishing identity. Maya Brooks, a certified legal prodigy who had successfully passed the highly rigorous bar examination at the unprecedented age of 16. a fact she had deliberately kept secret until this dramatic moment. The courtroom erupted into instantaneous, uncontrolled chaos as Judge Patterson's heavy gavel slammed repeatedly against the bench. Just as Maya stood tall, perfectly poised to deliver the final, crushing blow to the prosecution's now flimsy arguments, the judge leaned forward, his face ghastly pale. "This court is immediately adjourned for a 10-minute recess," he stammered, clearly in desperate need of time to process the monumental disclosure that had just unfolded. Maya's focused eyes tracked him as he quickly retreated to his private chambers, and a small, satisfied smile briefly touched the corners of her mouth. This, she knew, was only the beginning of the real fight. The courtroom buzzed intensely with chatter the moment the recess began. Spectators leaned toward one another, whispering excitedly about the teenage attorney who had just decisively stunned both the presiding judge and the prosecution team alike. Some openly marveled at her poise and intellectual depth. Others remained staunchly skeptical, insisting the entire affair had to be some sort of elaborate, highly improbable hoax. Maya remained seated stoically at the plaintiff's table, her hands tightly clasped together. Despite her composed, professional exterior, her heart was still racing. She had chosen to reveal her credentials, a bold, high-risk move, and there was absolutely no possibility of turning back now. Teresa nervously leaned toward her, her voice barely audible above the rising din. "Maya, are you completely sure we are going to prevail? They are acting as if you are some kind of fraud." Maya turned to her, her voice rock-steady. "They are acting that way, Teresa, because they are deeply afraid. The truth and the law is entirely on our side. Trust me." Before Teresa could formulate a response, the bailiff's authoritative announcement signaled the judge's return. The room fell instantly silent as Judge Patterson re-entered. His face was an unreadable, tightly controlled mask. He slowly took his seat, then cleared his throat forcefully. "This court will now resume its proceedings," he announced, his voice noticeably firmer than before. His gaze shifted directly toward Maya, but the suffocating arrogance from earlier had completely vanished, replaced by grudging respect. "Miss Brooks, the court officially acknowledges your certified credentials. You may proceed. However, I must advise you to tread with extreme caution. You are still representing your client in a matter of serious legal gravity." Maya rose and walked deliberately to the front of the courtroom. Every movement was slow and calculated. She could feel the heavy weight of hundreds of staring eyes boring into her back, but she deliberately blocked it out, focusing only on the crucial task at hand. "Your Honor," she began, her tone professional and crisp, "I would now like to submit additional, compelling evidence that further and irrevocably undermines the defense's claims." She approached the bench and handed the judge a dense stack of documents. Copies of emails exchanged directly between Teresa and the landlord, all of which directly contradicted his claims regarding lease violations. Maya had highlighted all the key, damning phrases in bright yellow, ensuring that nothing could possibly be overlooked. Judge Patterson studied the documents in heavy silence, his expression growing significantly more serious with each passing second. When he finally looked up, he turned with icy precision to the landlord's attorney. "Mr. Cole," the judge stated, his voice sharp and penetrating, "these emails directly and completely contradict your client's sworn testimony. Do you have a credible explanation for this discrepancy?" The landlord's attorney, a middle-aged man whose thinning hair was rapidly graying, nervously hesitated. "Your Honor, these emails could potentially have been fabricated. We would urgently require additional time to verify their authenticity." Maya didn't flinch or wait for the judge to rule. "Your Honor, I fully anticipated that exact argument," she said, pulling out yet another sheet of paper. "Here is the comprehensive chain of custody report for these emails, including metadata verification certified by a licensed digital forensics expert." The courtroom erupted into astonished murmurs yet again. Judge Patterson's gavel came down with a violent bang. "Order! I said order!" Maya returned to her seat, her confidence utterly unshaken. The judge turned back to the defense attorney. "Mr. Cole, unless you can instantly provide concrete, verifiable evidence to refute this detailed digital report, I will have no alternative but to consider these emails valid. The defense attorney stumbled over his next words, clearly having been caught completely off guard. Your Honor, we need substantial additional time to review. Denied. The judge interrupted, his tone chillingly icy. We have already spent far too much time navigating this matter. Miss Brooks, continue. Maya rose once more, her voice unwavering as she masterfully outlined the precise timeline of events, meticulously linking the landlord's actions to clear, flagrant violations of established housing laws. She brought up precedent after precedent, each legal citation reinforcing Teresa's unassailable case. At one point, the landlord himself, a burly, perpetually sour-faced man named Mr. Reynolds, leaned over and began furiously whispering into his attorney's ear. Maya registered the distraction but refused to let it disrupt her flow. Instead, she pressed on, her arguments growing exponentially more persuasive with every passing minute. But then, something entirely unexpected occurred. As Maya began to summarize her final, conclusive points, the landlord abruptly surged to his feet, his face apoplectic with raw anger. She's lying, he bellowed, violently pointing an accusatory finger directly at Maya. This entire thing is a fabricated setup. There is absolutely no way a kid like her knows all this complex legal stuff. The courtroom plunged into renewed chaos. Judge Patterson slammed his gavel repeatedly, his voice booming like thunder over the noise. Order in the court. Sit down immediately, Mr. Reynolds, or I will hold you in summary contempt. The landlord reluctantly slumped back into his chair, his chest heaving with unrestrained fury. Maya took a single deep breath, maintaining her flawless composure despite the dramatic outburst. Your Honor, she said calmly, if Mr. Reynolds genuinely possesses any evidence whatsoever to substantiate his inflammatory accusations, I formally invite him to present it now. Otherwise, I respectfully request that the court refocus entirely on the facts of the case before us. The judge nodded, his expression stern. Mr. Reynolds, you will remain absolutely silent unless specifically called upon to speak. Miss Brooks, you may continue your closing. Maya completed her presentation, her closing remarks delivered with the surgical precision and quiet authority of someone twice her age and experience. When she finally sat down, a deep wave of professional relief washed over her. But she knew the brutal battle was far from over. The defense attorney next called his sole remaining witness, a maintenance worker from the apartment complex who claimed to have seen multiple people entering and leaving Teresa's unit. Maya listened intently, diligently jotting down notes as the man provided vague, generalized testimony. When it was finally her turn for cross-examination, she approached the witness stand with a calm, measured stride. Mr. Davis, she began, you testified under oath that you saw multiple people entering and leaving Miss Carter's apartment. Can you specify precisely how many people and the exact dates this allegedly occurred? The man hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. Maybe 4 or 5 people, and it was like a couple of months ago. Maya nodded slowly. A couple of months ago. Do you perhaps recall the exact dates? No, not exactly, he admitted, shifting nervously in the hard wooden seat. Did you report this alleged violation to anyone in management at the time? Well, no, the man mumbled, looking increasingly uncomfortable. It didn't seem like a big deal then. Maya's lips curved into a faint, victorious smile. So, to clarify for the court, you are currently unable to provide specific dates, names, or any concrete evidence whatsoever to support your claim of lease violation. Is that correct, Mr. Davis? The man frowned but reluctantly nodded. Yeah, I guess so. Thank you, Mr. Davis, Maya said, stepping crisply away from the stand. As she returned to her place, she glanced at Teresa, who offered her a nervous but profoundly grateful smile. The remainder of the day's proceedings felt anticlimactic compared to the earlier drama, but a thick, palpable tension hung heavy in the air. When the court finally adjourned for the day, reporters instantly swarmed Maya and Teresa, shouting questions and relentlessly snapping photos. Maya shielded Teresa as effectively as she could, expertly guiding her through the aggressive crowd. Back at home, Maya collapsed onto the living room couch, the accumulated exhaustion finally catching up to her. Clara quietly placed a cup of soothing chamomile tea in front of her and sat down. "You were absolutely incredible today, sweetheart," her grandmother said softly, her pride evident. "I am so proud of you." Maya managed a tired, weak smile. "Thanks, Grandma, but it's not over yet. Tomorrow is going to be even tougher." Clara reached out and squeezed her hand firmly. "You've got this, Maya. Just remember exactly why you're doing it." Maya nodded, a flicker of determined fire returning to her tired eyes. "For people like Teresa. For everyone who has ever been told they are not enough." The following morning, Maya arrived at the courthouse unusually early, ready to face whatever new challenges awaited her. But as she walked through the imposing front doors, she was greeted by a sight she had certainly not anticipated. Two uniformed police officers standing near the main entrance, engaged in conversation with the smug-looking landlord, Mr. Reynolds. One of the officers spotted Maya and immediately began walking toward her, a grim, official expression set on his face. "Miss Brooks," he stated formally, "we need to speak with you." Maya froze momentarily, her mind instantly racing through potential scenarios. She scanned the officer's expression, desperately searching for any hint of what this sudden confrontation was about. Teresa, who had been walking a few steps behind her, caught up and immediately sensed the intense tension. "Is there a problem, officer?" Maya asked, keeping her voice meticulously steady and professional. The officer glanced briefly at the landlord, who was now smirking broadly from across the lobby. "We've received a serious report from Mr. Reynolds," the officer continued. "He is alleging that you falsified evidence that was submitted in this case." Teresa gasped sharply, her hand flying instinctively to her mouth. Maya's pulse quickened dramatically, but she forcibly retained her external calm. "That is an extremely serious accusation," she replied, her tone firm. "What evidence does he claim to have to support it?" The officer shifted uncomfortably. "We are not here right now to determine that. We are simply carrying out our due diligence. We will need you to accompany us down to the precinct station to answer some questions." The smug look on the landlord's face widened even further. Maya met his gaze head-on, her expression utterly unflinching. "I understand," she told the officer, "but I must first speak with my client and legal counsel before I accompany you anywhere." The officer hesitated but reluctantly nodded. "Fine, but don't take too long." Maya turned immediately to Teresa and spoke in a low, urgent voice. "This is a pure scare tactic, Teresa. He is trying desperately to rattle us because he knows, absolutely knows, his case is collapsing." "But what if they arrest you?" Teresa whispered, panic rapidly rising in her voice. "What if they won't," Maya said firmly, her voice allowing no room for doubt. "I have done nothing remotely wrong, and they have zero proof otherwise. Stay calm, and do not, under any circumstances, say a single word to the landlord or his attorney." Teresa nodded, visibly shaken but obedient. Maya then quickly stepped aside and called her grandmother. Clara answered on the first ring. "Maya, is everything all right?" "Grandma, I need you to contact Mr. Harris immediately," Maya said, referring to a family friend who was a highly respected retired attorney. "The landlord just leveled a false accusation against me, and the police want to question me." Clara's voice instantly hardened. "Stay strong, my dear girl. I will get in touch with him immediately. Do not allow them to intimidate you." "I won't," Maya promised, ending the brief call. She turned back to the waiting officer. "I am ready," she said. "But I want it clearly stated for the record that I have committed no illegal act. This is a blatant, calculated attempt to intimidate me." The officer nodded but offered no verbal response. As they walked toward the local station, Maya kept her head held high, refusing to give the malevolent landlord the satisfaction of seeing her falter. At the small police station, Maya was escorted into a standard, sterile interrogation room. It was bare except for a stark metal table and two uncomfortable chairs. One of the officers who had escorted her sat down directly across from her, placing a tape recorder squarely on the table. "Miss Brooks," the officer began, his voice flat and formal, "you are not formally under arrest, but we need to ask you some serious questions regarding the evidence you submitted in court. Mr. Reynolds claims unequivocally that it was fabricated." Maya folded her hands neatly on the table, her expression serene. "The evidence I submitted, officer, is 100% authentic. I possess comprehensive documentation to prove its validity, including a complete chain of custody report originating from a certified digital forensics expert." The officer frowned slightly. "Do you happen to have those documents with you?" "They are securely contained within my case file, which is currently back in the courtroom," Maya replied coolly. "You are welcome to retrieve and review them." The officer hesitated, then leaned back in his chair. "Why would Mr. Reynolds make these allegations if they were not true?" "Because he is desperate," Maya stated bluntly. "His entire case is disintegrating before the judge's eyes, and he knows it. This is his clumsy attempt to discredit me personally and delay the proceedings." The officer studied her intense gaze for a long moment, then stood up abruptly. "Wait here." Maya exhaled slowly as the officer left the room. Despite her composed exterior, she couldn't suppress a brief flicker of doubt. What if this truly derailed the entire case? What if they somehow believed the landlord's obvious lies? A quiet knock at the door interrupted her troubling thoughts. The officer returned, accompanied by Mr. Harris, the family friend and retired attorney Clara had contacted. He was an older gentleman with piercing, intelligent eyes and a confident, easy stride. He gave Maya a reassuring nod before addressing the officer. "I am here as Miss Brooks' legal counsel," Mr. Harris announced. "What precisely is the established basis for this unscheduled questioning?" The officer explained the landlord's accusations, but as Mr. Harris listened intently, his composed expression did not waver. When the officer finished, Mr. Harris leaned forward, his voice steady but carrying immense authority. "This is a patently baseless claim," he stated firmly. "If Mr. Reynolds possesses evidence to support these severe allegations, let him present it through the court process. Otherwise, you are detaining my client without lawful cause." The officer shifted uncomfortably. "We are not detaining her. Then she is free to immediately leave," Mr. Harris interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Unless you are formally planning to arrest her, this conversation is concluded." The officer hesitated but finally nodded grudgingly. "She is free to go, but we will be following up on this matter." Maya stood, her confidence fully restored. "I will be happy to cooperate completely, officer, strictly within the bounds of the law," she said. As they left the station, Mr. Harris placed a supportive hand on Maya's shoulder. "You handled yourself exceptionally well," he complimented her. "But you must be extremely careful. This landlord is playing dirty, desperate pool." Maya nodded solemnly. "I expected as much. Thank you so much for coming, Mr. Harris." "Any time, child," Mr. Harris replied warmly. "Now go back and win that case." When Maya returned to the courthouse, Teresa rushed to her, the relief evident on her face. "Are you okay? What happened?" "They let me go," Maya said simply. "They didn't have anything substantial to hold me on." Teresa sighed deeply with relief, but the tension still lingered in her eyes. "What do we do next?" "We stick rigidly to the plan," Maya said firmly. "This is just another predictable obstacle. We will get through it together." The hearing resumed that afternoon, but the atmosphere in the courtroom was palpably different. The landlord sat with a renewed smug expression, clearly expecting the morning's police encounter to have completely rattled Maya. But as she stood to continue her meticulously prepared argument, it was as if nothing untoward had happened. Maya methodically picked apart the landlord's remaining defenses, presenting incontrovertible evidence and calling witnesses who testified to his long history of exploiting vulnerable tenants. The tension in the room grew thicker with each passing minute, and by the close of the day, the landlord's bravado had finally begun to crack. But just as Maya felt they were finally gaining undeniable ground, another swift twist threw everything into renewed chaos. As the court prepared to adjourn, the landlord's attorney, Mr. Cole, suddenly stood and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, we have just unexpectedly received new evidence that we firmly believe will irrevocably change the course of this entire case. We urgently request an emergency motion to introduce it tomorrow morning." The judge frowned deeply. "What manner of evidence are we discussing, Mr. Cole?" The attorney hesitated, clearly attempting to make the information sound far more dramatic than it likely was. "Financial records, Your Honor, that strongly suggest Miss Carter has been intentionally withholding critical information about her income." The courtroom immediately erupted into loud murmurs. Maya's heart sank momentarily as she glanced at Teresa, who looked utterly confused and distressed. The judge banged his gavel forcefully for silence. "We will review the motion first thing tomorrow," Judge Patterson stated. "Court is adjourned for the day." As Maya slowly packed up her files, she couldn't shake the heavy, sinking feeling in her chest. If the landlord's team had resorted to fabricating financial evidence, it had the potential to derail everything they had fought for. She turned to Teresa, who was pale and trembling beside her. "I don't understand," Teresa whispered, her voice fragile. "What financial records? I don't have anything to hide." Maya placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, Teresa. We will figure it out." But as they walked out of the courthouse, the afternoon sun unforgivingly bright, Maya felt the weight of the coming confrontation settle over her, a dark certainty that the legal battle was about to descend into outright warfare. The stakes were not just professional. They felt deeply personal, higher than any case she had ever handled. That night, Maya retreated to her room, plunging into an ocean of paperwork. She meticulously reviewed every document, every email, every scribbled note related to the Carter case. She knew the landlord's counsel was employing every dirty trick in the attorney's playbook, and she had to be one step ahead, anticipating their next calculated move. The vague reference to financial records still gnawed at her. It made absolutely no sense. Teresa had been meticulously transparent about her income, and Maya herself had cross-referenced every one of her clients' bank statements. Maya's laptop screen cast a faint, cold glow across the dim room as she relentlessly typed out possible counter-arguments and defensive strategies. The silence was broken only by a soft tap on the doorframe. Her grandmother, Clara, poked her head in, her expression steeped in gentle concern. "You need rest, sweetheart," Clara said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You can't fight this battle if you're running on fumes." "I know, Grandma," Maya replied, her eyes fixed on the screen, "but I need to figure out what they're planning. I can't let them blindside us tomorrow." Clara walked fully into the room and placed a comforting hand on Maya's weary shoulder. "You've done everything humanly possible tonight. Trust yourself, Maya, and trust that the truth will ultimately come out." Maya sighed deeply, nodding reluctantly. "You're right," she conceded, finally shutting her laptop. "I'll get some sleep." But as she lay in bed, the silence amplified the anxious churning of her mind. Sleep was a distant, unreachable luxury. What kind of fabricated evidence could they possibly possess? And just how far were Mr. Reynolds and his ruthless legal team truly willing to go to completely discredit an innocent woman like Teresa? The next morning, the courtroom was intensely packed again. Word of the landlord's audacious, last-minute motion had circulated widely, and everyone was eager to witness the unfolding legal drama. Maya and Teresa sat rigidly at the plaintiff's table, both attempting to project a sense of composure despite the palpable tension thick in the air. Judge Patterson entered, his face stern and unreadable as usual. "This court is now in session," he announced, his voice booming slightly. "Mr. Cole, you may proceed with your motion." The landlord's attorney, Mr. Cole, stood, approaching the bench with an air of theatrical gravity. He carried a particularly thick, seemingly well-organized folder. "Your Honor, these are financial records that strongly suggest Miss Carter has been receiving significant income from undisclosed sources. We believe this information is profoundly relevant to the case, as it directly pertains to her demonstrated ability to pay rent and undermines the claims of financial hardship she has made, Cole stated smoothly. He handed the weighty folder to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Judge Patterson began flipping through the pages, his brow furrowing deeper with each one. "Miss Brooks," the judge said, looking up sharply, "have you had a prior opportunity to review this evidence?" Maya immediately stood. "No, Your Honor. This is the first time I'm seeing it. I would request a reasonable amount of time to review these voluminous documents and verify their authenticity." Mr. Cole immediately jumped to his feet, objecting. "Your Honor, the evidence is straightforward and speaks for itself. It should be admitted immediately. Any delay would unfairly disadvantage my client, who is simply seeking the facts." Maya stepped forward, maintaining her measured tone. "Your Honor, this alleged evidence was presented at the 11th hour, with absolutely no prior notice. Given the seriousness of these allegations, it is only fair that we be allowed time to examine it thoroughly and prepare an adequate response." The judge considered the arguments for a tense moment before finally nodding. "Miss Brooks is correct. The plaintiff will have until tomorrow morning to review this evidence. Court is adjourned for the day." As soon as the gavel hit, Maya and Teresa practically sprinted out of the courtroom, finding a secluded, quiet corner to pore over the stack of documents. Maya's heart plummeted as she flipped through the pages. The records included what appeared to be professional bank statements and detailed payment logs that seemed to suggest Teresa had, in fact, been receiving substantial sums of money from some unknown source. "I don't understand," Teresa whispered, her voice shaking violently. "I've never seen these records before. They are absolutely not mine." Maya studied the documents closely, her analytical mind racing at top speed. "These look alarmingly official, but something feels profoundly off. I'm going to dig deeper into the details." She pulled out her laptop and immediately began cross-referencing the account numbers and transaction details listed in the documents. After an hour of painstaking research, she found the first thread of a clue. "Look at this," Maya said, pointing urgently to the screen. "The account these payments are supposedly coming from belongs to a company called Harmony Solutions. Have you ever heard of them, Teresa?" Teresa shook her head vehemently. "No. What kind of business do they even do?" "I'm not sure yet," Maya said, typing furiously, determined to unravel the mystery. "But I'm going to find out." Her subsequent search revealed that Harmony Solutions was nothing more than a ghost, a shell company with zero real business operations. Its listed address was a post office box in a distant state, and its website consisted of a single, cryptic page with vague, generic descriptions of consulting services. Maya's gut screamed that this company was a mere front, designed to obfuscate, but she needed tangible proof. "Teresa, this could be our smoking gun," Maya said, the adrenaline beginning to pump. "If we can definitively link Harmony Solutions back to Mr. Reynolds, we can prove that these records were entirely fabricated." "But how do we do that?" Teresa asked, desperation creeping into her voice, fearing the task was impossible. Maya leaned back, her mind mapping out the technical requirements. "We'll need specialized help. I'm going to call someone I trust who knows the digital side of things." That same evening, Maya met with Aaron, a tech-savvy friend from her neighborhood who had assisted her with complex research in the past. Aaron was a college student majoring in cybersecurity, and he absolutely thrived on a good technical challenge. "Fabricated financial records?" Aaron said, raising a skeptical eyebrow while taking a sip of his soda. "That's seriously shady. But if there's a digital trail, however faint, I'll find it." Maya handed him the documents and quickly explained everything she had discovered so far. Aaron's fingers flew across his keyboard, a blur of motion as he began his rapid, deep dive into Harmony Solutions. After an hour of intense silence, he leaned back with a triumphant, focused grin. "Got it. Harmony Solutions is actually registered under a larger holding company. That holding company is owned by, wait for it, your landlord, Mr. Reynolds." Maya's jaw tightened, confirming her darkest suspicions. "So he's behind this entire sham. He created fake records to deliberately frame Teresa." "Looks exactly like it," Aaron confirmed. "And I've got the digital breadcrumbs to prove intent." These fraudulent transactions were generated using a cheap, basic template software package. Amateur move, honestly. Maya smiled, the first genuine smile she'd managed all day. Aaron, you are an absolute lifesaver. Just doing my part, he said with a humble shrug. I'll send you everything you need, the metadata, the ownership chain. But be careful. Guys like Reynolds don't play fair, even when they're caught. The next morning, Maya walked into the courtroom radiating a renewed sense of unshakable determination. She had spent the rest of the night organizing Aaron's technical findings into a razor-sharp, comprehensive presentation, and she was ready to methodically dismantle the landlord's latest nefarious scheme. When the hearing resumed, Mr. Cole confidently presented the fraudulent financial records to the court, reiterating his claim that Teresa had deliberately hidden income. Judge Patterson turned his attention to Maya. Miss Brooks, are you prepared to respond? Maya stood, her voice steady and controlled. Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to present conclusive evidence that these financial records are not only fraudulent but were expertly fabricated by Mr. Reynolds to completely discredit my client. A wave of audible gasps filled the courtroom as Maya walked to the front and began her presentation. She meticulously explained the direct, documented connection between Harmony Solutions and Mr. Reynolds, detailing precisely how the shell company had been utilized to manufacture the fake transactions. She handed over copies of Aaron's findings, which included damning screenshots, transaction metadata, and a step-by-step forensic explanation of the forgery process. By the time she concluded, the landlord's previous smug expression had entirely vanished. He was whispering furiously to his attorney, who looked visibly pale and utterly flustered. Judge Patterson studied the new evidence for several long, intense moments before addressing the landlord directly. Mr. Reynolds, do you have any explanation for this egregious activity? The landlord stammered, his face turning an alarming shade of red. I didn't do anything. This is obviously a setup. The judge's expression hardened considerably. The evidence presented says otherwise. I am deeply disturbed by these actions, which appear to be a clear attempt to manipulate and defraud this court. I will be referring this matter for immediate further investigation. Maya returned to her seat, her heart still pounding with residual adrenaline. She had decisively won this pivotal round, but she knew, intrinsically, that the war was far from over. As the judge adjourned for a short recess, she glanced at Teresa, who looked back with tears of profound gratitude welling in her eyes. But just as Maya and Teresa began packing up their materials, Mr. Cole stood and made an announcement that sent a chilling wave of dread down Maya's spine. Your Honor, in light of these completely baseless allegations, my client intends to countersue for defamation. We will be filing the paperwork immediately. The shocking announcement hit the already strained courtroom like a thunderclap. A countersuit? Maya's mind instantly began racing through the implications. She recognized this as another calculated ploy by the landlord, a tactic designed solely to intimidate and exhaust Teresa into submission. But it undeniably added a new, exhausting layer of complexity to an already grueling fight. Judge Patterson raised a skeptical brow at Mr. Cole. You intend to countersue for defamation after being clearly implicated in the fabrication of evidence before this court? This court will require compelling and unambiguous proof to even entertain such a claim, counsel. Mr. Cole adjusted his tie, regaining a measure of his characteristic smugness. Your Honor, we will provide that proof. The accusations against my client are completely baseless, and we believe this case has unfairly and irreparably damaged his reputation and his business interests. The judge exhaled heavily, clearly displeased by the attorney's brazenness. You may file your motion, but be advised. This court will not tolerate frivolous litigation aimed at harassment. Proceed at your client's own risk. The gavel came down with a heavy finality, adjourning the session for the day. As the courtroom slowly emptied, Maya remained seated, her thoughts swirling chaotically. Teresa sat beside her, visibly shaken. Maya, Teresa whispered, her voice barely audible. What does this mean? Can he really do this to us? Maya turned to her, her eyes filled with renewed determination. He's bluffing, Teresa. He knows his case is weak and now exposed, so he's trying to scare us into backing down and dropping the suit. But we are absolutely not going anywhere. That evening, Maya gathered her small, dedicated team, Teresa, her grandmother Clara, and Aaron, for an emergency strategy session at her home. Clara had brewed a pot of strong, aromatic tea, and the comforting scent filled the small living room as Maya laid out her plan. This countersuit is primarily a distraction, Maya began, marking points on a notepad. But we absolutely cannot ignore it. If we allow it to gain traction, it could effectively muddy the waters and make it significantly harder for the judge to discern the truth of the original case. Aaron leaned forward eagerly. I've been digging deeper into Reynolds' financial records. Full spectrum. The guy's got major skeletons in his closet, Maya. I found complex transactions tied to several other, identical shell companies, and it strongly looks like he's been systematically using them to dodge millions in taxes and funnel illicit money. Clara's eyes widened at the severity of the findings. That's very serious. Could that information potentially help your case, Maya? It could be devastating for him, Maya said, her caution returning. But we need to tread carefully. If we bring it up, we need rock-solid, irrefutable proof, and a well-articulated strategy to tie this complex financial fraud back directly to Teresa's eviction case. Teresa looked completely overwhelmed by the escalating complexity. This is just so much, Maya. I never wanted any of this attention. I just wanted to protect my children and keep our home safe. Maya placed a reassuring hand firmly on her shoulder. I know, Teresa, and that is exactly what we are going to do. No matter how dirty or underhanded they play, we are not backing down now. The next day, Maya walked into the courtroom fully prepared for another grueling, protracted battle. True to his word, Mr. Cole had filed the countersuit, claiming that Teresa's public accusations had caused Mr. Reynolds severe emotional distress and irreparable harm to his otherwise spotless reputation. Judge Patterson reviewed the motion with a palpable, skeptical eye. Mr. Cole, your motion makes extremely bold claims of damage. Do you have verifiable evidence to support these severe allegations? Mr. Cole nodded confidently. Yes, Your Honor. We intend to call witnesses who can testify to the significant emotional and professional damage these baseless accusations have caused my client. Maya stood immediately. Your Honor, we firmly believe this countersuit is simply an attempt to distract from the real issue at hand. Mr. Reynolds' documented misconduct. We respectfully request the opportunity to depose Mr. Reynolds and his supposed witnesses before this motion proceeds any further. The judge considered this countermotion for a moment. Very well. Depositions will be scheduled and completed before we move forward on the countersuit. Court is adjourned for the day. A week later, Maya sat in a small, windowless conference room, facing Mr. Reynolds and his lead attorney. The deposition was tense and hostile from the very first minute. Mr. Cole tried repeatedly to deflect questions and steer the conversation far away from incriminating topics, but Maya was relentless and focused. Mr. Reynolds, she began, her tone sharp and accusatory. Can you explain why large payments from Harmony Solutions are demonstrably tied to your personal bank account? Mr. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his previous composure completely fractured. That's none of your business. It is directly relevant to this case, Maya pressed, her voice rising slightly. Harmony Solutions fabricated financial records specifically to frame my client. Are you denying your personal, controlling connection to this shell company? Reynolds glared at her, his hostility barely contained. I don't have to answer that question. Maya leaned forward, her voice calm but penetrating. You do, sir, if you expect this court to believe your countersuit for defamation has any legitimate merit. Reynolds' attorney quickly interrupted, visibly sweating. Objection. These questions are utterly irrelevant to the defamation countersuit. Maya turned to him, unflinching. They are entirely relevant, given the foundational allegations against my client. If you want to talk about defamation and damages, let's thoroughly discuss the damage caused by Mr. Reynolds' documented false accusations and criminal intent. The tension in the cramped room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Reynolds' attorney eventually shifted tactics, redirecting the conversation back to the surface claims of the countersuit. but the fundamental cracks in their case were already painfully evident. As the days passed, Maya's dedicated team uncovered even more damning evidence against Mr. Reynolds. Aaron's ongoing investigation revealed that Harmony Solutions was far from the only shell company he controlled. Several others were linked to brazen fraudulent schemes explicitly targeting vulnerable, low-income tenants across the city. Armed with this devastating new information, Maya prepared to present her ultimate findings to the court. But as the hearing approached, the external pressure began to take its inevitable toll. Reporters hounded Maya and Teresa, twisting the complex story into sensational, shallow headlines. Social media was ablaze with heated debates over the case, and Maya found herself the target of both effusive public admiration and harsh, anonymous criticism. One evening, as she worked late in her grandmother's cozy living room, Clara sat down beside her, offering a warm presence. "You are carrying a tremendous load on your shoulders, Maya," Clara said softly, rubbing her back. "You don't have to bear this weight alone." Maya sighed, her profound exhaustion showing clearly on her face. "I just want to do what is absolutely right, Grandma. But sometimes it genuinely feels like the whole world is arrayed against us." Clara smiled gently, offering the wisdom of experience. "The truth, my dear, always has a way of shining through, no matter how dark or complicated things seem. Just keep going one deliberate step at a time." When the court reconvened, the atmosphere was palpably electric. Maya presented her findings with chilling precision, tying Mr. Reynolds' complex web of shell companies to a systemic pattern of fraud and tenant abuse. She meticulously outlined how he had utilized these schemes to intimidate tenants and silence potential critics. Judge Patterson listened intently, his expression growing darker and more grave with each new revelation. When Maya finished, the courtroom was plunged into stunned silence. "Mr. Cole," the judge said, turning to the landlord's attorney, his voice cold, "do you have any coherent response to these very serious allegations of pervasive fraud?" Cole stammered, clearly blindsided by the depth of the discovery. "Your Honor, we believe these claims are entirely unrelated to the matter of the countersuit before the court." The judge cut him off sharply. "Unrelated? They speak directly to your client's credibility and established pattern of criminal behavior. This court will not proceed with the countersuit until these allegations are fully and thoroughly investigated by the appropriate authorities." Maya felt a massive surge of relief, but it was agonizingly short-lived. Just as the judge prepared to adjourn, a sudden commotion erupted near the back of the courtroom. Two men in dark suits entered, flashing official badges. "Your Honor," one of them announced in a clear, authoritative voice, "we are federal investigators. We have been conducting an ongoing investigation into Mr. Reynolds for some time, and we now possess a warrant for his immediate arrest." Gasps filled the courtroom as the officers quickly approached the landlord, who immediately turned ghastly pale. "This is a mistake," he shouted as the federal agents swiftly handcuffed him. "You can't do this." Maya watched, her heart pounding in her chest. This was an undeniable victory, a massive stroke of fate, but she still couldn't shake the heavy feeling that the fight, somehow, wasn't quite over yet. The courtroom descended into complete chaos as the federal agents efficiently led Mr. Reynolds away in handcuffs. His frantic, echoing protests were quickly drowned out by the confused murmurs of the crowd. Maya sat frozen in her seat, her mind reeling from the dramatic turn of events. She had certainly not anticipated the landlord's immediate arrest, but she recognized that this development would dramatically shift the landscape of the entire case. Judge Patterson banged his gavel forcefully, demanding order. "This court will reconvene tomorrow morning to determine the appropriate procedural path forward," he announced sternly, before adjourning the session. Teresa turned to Maya, her voice thick with emotion and trembling hope. "Does this mean it's over, Maya? Is he finally going to jail?" Maya gently shook her head, a lawyer's sobriety taking hold. "It's a huge development, Teresa, the biggest yet. But it doesn't automatically end the case. We need to wait and see precisely how this criminal process plays out." Later that evening, Maya sat with Aaron and Clara in the kitchen, meticulously poring over the day's stunning events. Aaron had been following the news online, where articles about Reynolds' arrest were spreading like wildfire across the local media landscape. "Looks like the feds have been tracking him for years," Aaron said, scrolling through his laptop screen. "Tax fraud, wire fraud, large-scale tenant exploitation, you name it. This guy has been running sophisticated schemes across the entire state." Clara leaned back in her chair, her expression grim but satisfied. It's no wonder he was so desperately trying to silence Teresa. Exposing this case publicly probably tipped the scales and forced the investigator's hand. Maya nodded, her brow furrowed in deep thought. "We need to prepare for tomorrow regardless. Reynolds may be out of the picture for the moment, but his attorney, Mr. Cole, will absolutely try to push the defamation counter-suit forward, if only out of spite." Aaron frowned. "Even without Reynolds present, they're still trying to fight?" "Possibly," Maya said, gathering her notes. "But the judge now knows without a shadow of a doubt that the truth is on our side. We just have to make absolutely sure we stay one step ahead of their tactics." The next morning, the courtroom was noticeably quieter than before. The absence of Mr. Reynolds was palpable, but Mr. Cole, his attorney, was present, looking distinctly more haggard and stressed than usual. Maya and Teresa took their seats, bracing themselves for whatever new curveball was coming. Judge Patterson entered and addressed the room in a measured tone. "Before we proceed, I want to address the recent developments. The arrest of Mr. Reynolds raises extremely serious questions about the overall integrity of this case and, specifically, the countersuit. However, this court still has a statutory duty to evaluate all evidence before reaching a final decision." Mr. Cole stood, his voice wavering slightly. "Your Honor, while my client is temporarily unavailable, I firmly believe the countersuit should proceed based on the merits of our initial claims of defamation." Maya stood in immediate response. "Your Honor, the countersuit has zero merit. The documented fabricated evidence, Mr. Reynolds' arrest, and his established history of misconduct completely undermine any credibility the defense might attempt to claim." The judge nodded slowly. "Miss Brooks makes a strong argument. However, I will allow the defense to present their case and their supporting witnesses before issuing a definitive ruling. Mr. Cole, you may proceed." Mr. Cole called his first witness, a tenant from another property owned by Mr. Reynolds. The man claimed that Reynolds had always been kind, an ethical and fair landlord, insisting that the accusations against him were nothing more than unfortunate misunderstandings. Maya listened carefully, taking focused notes. When it was her turn to cross-examine, she approached the stand with confident purpose. "Mr. Davis," she began, addressing the witness directly, "you've testified that Mr. Reynolds was a fair landlord. Can you confirm if you've ever personally had any severe disputes with him?" The man hesitated, glancing nervously at Cole. "No, not personally." "Have you ever been threatened with eviction or faced any unexpected, steep rent increases while residing on his property?" "Well, no," he admitted reluctantly. "Are you aware that Mr. Reynolds owns multiple properties under a variety of different business names, including shell companies?" Maya pressed the point firmly. The witness shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. I've heard rumors." Maya smiled faintly, a small, knowing expression. "Rumors, Mr. Davis, can often be very telling, can't they?" "No further questions, Your Honor." As the day wore on, the defense's case rapidly began to crumble. Their witnesses offered little more than vague, easily discredited praise for Reynolds, and none could refute the mounting, documented evidence against him. By the late afternoon, it was painfully clear that Mr. Cole was completely running out of strategies and witnesses. When it was Maya's turn to make her final argument against the countersuit, she stood with the quiet, potent confidence that had become her trademark throughout the trial. "Your Honor," she began, her gaze sweeping the room, "this case is about much more than just my client's rent dispute. It is about standing up to those who systematically abuse their tremendous power to exploit and intimidate others. Mr. Reynolds' arrest, coupled with the overwhelming evidence we've presented, leaves no doubt whatsoever about his malicious actions. This countersuit is nothing but a desperate, final attempt to deflect blame, and it has absolutely no basis in verifiable truth." She turned briefly toward Teresa, who sat nervously at the plaintiff's table. Miss Carter is a hard-working, devoted mother who has done absolutely nothing wrong. She deserves justice, Your Honor, and this court has the power to deliver it decisively. As Maya returned to her seat, she caught a glimpse of Mr. Cole. His shoulders were slumped in defeat, and he pointedly avoided her gaze. The judge took a long moment to meticulously review his notes before finally addressing the court. Based on the substantial evidence presented to this court, it is crystal clear that the defamation countersuit completely lacks merit. This court hereby dismisses the countersuit with prejudice and will proceed immediately with the original case. A wave of profound, overwhelming relief washed over Maya and Teresa. The countersuit was officially dead, and the path to final victory seemed clearer than ever. But just as the courtroom began to stir and empty, a bailiff approached Maya with a sealed, official envelope. "This was just delivered for you," he said simply. Maya opened it carefully, her heart immediately beginning to pound again as she read the contents. It was a subpoena. Reynolds' legal team, still operating, had filed a motion to introduce what they termed new evidence, and the subsequent hearing was set for the very next day. Her relief was brutally short-lived. The fight, impossibly, was still far from over. Maya's heart sank completely as she read the details of the subpoena. New evidence? She muttered under her breath, her mind already racing with questions. What on earth could Reynolds' team possibly have left to present? And how could they have managed to file anything new with Reynolds himself behind bars? Teresa, who had been basking in the glow of the judge's dismissal of the malicious countersuit, noticed Maya's expression shift instantly to alarm. "What is it?" she asked nervously, her voice betraying fresh fear. Maya handed her the document, her own determination momentarily shadowed by exhaustion. "They're trying to come back at us again. Filing a motion to introduce new evidence they claim is crucial. We have a hearing tomorrow," Maya informed Teresa, watching the color drain from her client's already pale face. "New evidence?" Teresa's voice was barely a whisper, filled with dread. "What else can they possibly throw at us, Maya?" Maya placed a solid, reassuring hand on Teresa's shoulder. "Whatever it is, we'll be prepared for it. This is nothing more than another desperate, transparent attempt to stall the proceedings and break your spirit." That evening, the familiar hum of her apartment offered Maya no comfort. She immediately called Aaron, laying out the baffling sequence of events. Aaron was just as incredulous as she was. "New evidence? That's a staggeringly bold move, especially considering the legal quicksand they are already sinking in," Aaron mused, the frantic clicking of his keyboard audible over the line. "They have to be banking on some massive piece of leverage, or they are executing a colossal bluff. Either way, we cannot afford to take any chances," Maya countered, pacing her living room. "I need you to dive deep into Reynolds' legal team structure. See if they've onboarded anyone new, especially since his arrest. Look for consultants, investigators, anyone operating in the shadows." "I'm on it," Aaron confirmed instantly. "I'll let you know what turns up." The next morning, the marble halls of the courthouse felt cold and heavy. Maya walked in, projecting an air of unwavering professional confidence, though a cold knot of uncertainty tightened in her stomach. Teresa sat next to her, her hands gripping each other so tightly in her lap her knuckles were white. The courtroom was a cauldron of anticipation. Reporters scribbled notes. Spectators leaned forward, eager for the latest legal spectacle. Judge Patterson entered, his face carved stone, entirely unreadable. "This court is now in session. Mr. Cole, you requested to introduce new evidence. Please explain its relevance," the judge commanded. Mr. Cole rose, clutching a thick manila folder. His usual slick demeanor seemed restored. A smug, dangerous confidence emanated from him. This worried Maya immensely. "Your Honor, this evidence directly challenges the plaintiff's fabricated claims of financial hardship and fundamentally speaks to her credibility," he stated smoothly. He handed the folder to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Patterson opened it, his expression remaining perfectly neutral as he absorbed the contents. "Miss Brooks," the judge said, looking up, "have you had the opportunity to review this evidence?" "No, Your Honor," Maya replied immediately. "This is the first time we are seeing this information." "Very well," the judge decided. "You will have the chance to respond after Mr. Cole presents his case." Maya steeled herself. Mr. Cole began to address the court, his voice ringing with feigned indignation. "Your Honor, these are signed affidavits from multiple independent witnesses who claim to have seen Miss Carter engaging in substantial, unreported business activities, specifically operating a cash-only, unlicensed daycare service from her apartment." A collective, audible gasp ripped through the room. Teresa's face turned an ashen white. She whipped her head toward Maya, shaking it violently. "That's not true. I don't know what they are talking about," she whispered, devastated. Maya gave a tiny, firm nod. Her legal mind was already racing, constructing the counter-argument. "Don't worry," she whispered back. "We will dismantle this." Mr. Cole continued, presenting the affidavits and blurry photographs purportedly showing parents dropping children off at Teresa's building. The defense argued that this undeclared income shattered her claim of financial hardship and destroyed her moral credibility. When it was Maya's turn for cross-examination, she approached the bench with her characteristic, unnerving calm. "Your Honor, may I formally examine these affidavits?" The judge nodded, and the bailiff handed her copies of the documents. Maya rapidly scanned them, her eyes catching immediate flaws. Vague, generalized language from the alleged witnesses, and discrepancies in the notarized signatures. "Mr. Cole," she began, her tone measured but sharp. "Can you confirm the full legal identities of these alleged witnesses? And more importantly, confirm whether they have been formally deposed?" Cole hesitated, his restored confidence faltering slightly. "They have not been deposed yet, but their affidavits are legally signed and notarized." Maya allowed herself a thin, predatory smile. Notarized documentation does not equate to credible testimony. Without depositions, we possess zero mechanism for verifying the authenticity or veracity of these extremely serious claims. She pivoted to the judge. "Your Honor, I respectfully request that Mr. Cole arrange for these witnesses to be made available for immediate depositions before this court will even consider admitting this documentation as evidence." "That is a perfectly reasonable request," Judge Patterson agreed, his stern gaze landing on Cole. "Mr. Cole, arrange for your witnesses to be deposed by the end of the week. Until then, this evidence will not be formally considered by this court." After the hearing, the heavy weight of the new, malicious allegations pressed down on them. As they walked toward the car, Teresa finally broke down, hot tears carving paths through her fear. "Maya, what if they believe this?" she cried, her voice ragged. "I don't even know these people. How can I possibly prove they are lying?" Maya pulled her into a fierce, protective hug. "We will prove it, Teresa. I promise you. This is just another despicable game they are playing, and we are going to expose them fully." That evening, Aaron called with the tactical update Maya desperately needed. "Maya, I found something incredibly interesting. One of the witnesses who signed those flimsy affidavits. She's strongly connected to a property management company that has direct ties to Reynolds' larger portfolio." Maya's eyes narrowed, focusing the rage into calculation. "You mean she's on his payroll?" "Not directly," Aaron clarified, quickly typing to pull up documents. "But she previously worked for a firm that oversees management for some of his buildings. It's certainly more than enough to obliterate any claim of impartiality." Maya nodded. "That is exactly the line we need. Can you gather every detail about her employment history?" "I'm already on it. And get this, 2 of the other alleged witnesses have documented financial connections to Harmony Solutions, a known Reynolds shell company. I'm sending you the full data dump now." A genuine, triumphant smile spread across Maya's face for the first time that day. "Aaron, you are a lifesaver." The next morning, Maya walked into the depositions and systematically, almost clinically, dismantled the witnesses' credibility. She presented Aaron's meticulously sourced findings, showcasing their financial ties to Reynolds and tearing apart their purported motivations for coming forward. One witness, visibly sweating under the intense pressure, eventually admitted that she had been paid a specific sum merely to sign the affidavit without reading it. Another claimed she had been misled, believing she was signing a community petition regarding tenant rights. By the end of the marathon depositions, it was unequivocally clear that the new evidence was yet another poorly constructed fabrication. Maya presented her findings to Judge Patterson, who was now openly, visibly disgusted by the defense's unethical tactics. "Mr. Cole," the judge declared sternly, leaning forward, "this court has finally had enough of these baseless, time-wasting distractions. The evidence you attempted to present is entirely inadmissible, and I am now seriously considering punitive sanctions against your client for attempting to deliberately mislead this court." Maya and Teresa exchanged a deep, shared glance of relief. The victory felt immense, yet bittersweet. The extent to which Reynolds' team was willing to descend into criminality proved they were far from finished. As the hearing adjourned, Maya stepped outside into the sharp, late autumn air, her resolve hardened. But as she approached her car, a man in an impeccably tailored dark suit materialized from the deep shadows. "Miss Brooks," he said, his voice low, icy, and utterly devoid of warmth. "A friendly word of advice: back off. You don't know the caliber of people you're dealing with." Maya froze, her heart hammering against her ribs, but her professional training kicked in instantly. Her voice remained rock-steady. "If that is intended as a threat, you will need to significantly improve your delivery, because I am not going anywhere." The man's mouth curled into a chilling, calculated smile, his eyes narrowing to pinpricks of malice. "Suit yourself," he drawled, his tone saturated with mockery. "But don't tell me I didn't provide fair warning." He turned abruptly and walked away, melting back into the shadows of the crowded parking garage. Teresa rushed out of the courthouse doors moments later. "Who was that?" she asked, her voice shaking violently. "I don't know," Maya replied, her gaze sweeping the area. "But it confirms that Reynolds' team isn't just playing dirty, they are actively escalating." "Maya," Teresa whispered, fear etched onto her pale face. "This is getting truly dangerous. Maybe we should—" "No," Maya interrupted, her resolve firm as steel. "That is precisely what they want. If we capitulate now, they win, and they will continue doing this to every person they want to exploit." Teresa nodded reluctantly, but the fear in her eyes was undeniable. That evening, Maya sat at her desk, replaying the entire chilling encounter. The man's tone, his confident stride, the vague but pointed threat. It all felt coldly calculated. She called Aaron, hoping he could shed some light on the man's identity. "Hey Maya," Aaron answered. "What's up?" She recounted the parking lot incident, describing the man in meticulous detail. "I don't know who he is, but he is clearly connected to Reynolds or his firm. Can you look into anyone new they might have retained?" Aaron sighed heavily. "It's highly possible they've brought in specialized private investigators or consultants to manage damage control. I'll dig around and see what I can find in the deeper networks." "Thanks, Aaron," Maya said. "And let me know immediately if anything looks suspicious. I have a terrible feeling this isn't over." The next morning, Maya arrived at the courthouse early, determined to seize complete control of the case narrative. To her surprise, Judge Patterson called her into chambers before the session began. "Miss Brooks," he said, his expression unusually, profoundly grave. "I've received an extraordinary letter from Mr. Reynolds' attorney requesting to indefinitely delay the proceedings, citing his client's mounting legal troubles and inability to participate fully." Maya's brow furrowed in immediate frustration. "Your Honor, this is simply another blatant stalling tactic. The defense has repeatedly tried to derail this case using unethical means. Granting an indefinite delay would set an extremely dangerous precedent." The judge nodded, considering her argument carefully. "I concur that the request is highly suspect. However, the court must balance procedural fairness with judicial efficiency. Do you have a workable proposal for how we should proceed?" Maya took a measured, steadying breath. "Your Honor, I request that the case move forward immediately without any further delays. If Mr. Reynolds is unavailable, his legal team can represent him based solely on the evidence already submitted." Judge Patterson finally leaned back, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "Very well. I will deny the defense's request for an indefinite delay. I am setting a final hearing date. Be prepared to present your closing arguments next week. The announcement sent visible shockwaves through the courtroom when the session resumed. Mr. Cole, clearly caught off guard and entirely unprepared for this development, scrambled to object, but the judge held firm. This case has dragged on long enough, Judge Patterson declared, his voice decisive. Both sides will present closing arguments next week, and this court will issue a ruling immediately thereafter. After court adjourned, Teresa turned to Maya, her voice filled with a turbulent mix of relief and profound anxiety. So, this is it? It's almost over? Maya nodded, placing a firm hand on Teresa's arm. Almost. But we need to ensure our closing argument is absolutely airtight. This is our chance to seal the deal forever. That evening, Aaron called back, his voice thick with urgency. Maya, you are absolutely not going to believe this. I found out who that guy in the parking lot was. His name is Lucas Harper. He's a notorious private investigator with an established reputation for extremely questionable work. Questionable how? Maya asked, a cold clench tightening in her gut. Harassment, intimidation, planting evidence, fabrication, you name it. He's been linked to several high-profile cases where the opposing party suddenly and mysteriously dropped out after his involvement. Maya exhaled sharply. So they are trying to employ professional thugs to scare us into quitting. Exactly, Aaron confirmed. But here is the kicker. Harper is tied directly to yet another one of Reynolds' shell companies. They are paying him under the table. Maya's eyes narrowed with cold determination. That is precisely the pattern of corruption we need to lay out for the judge. Can you send me every single piece of information you have on Harper? It's on its way, Aaron replied, his tone serious. Just be careful, Maya. This guy does not play by any rules. The next day, Maya incorporated Aaron's devastating findings into her case file. She knew presenting this type of information was risky. Harper's presence wasn't directly a case fact, but it painted an unmistakable picture of Reynolds' aggressive, unethical tactics and his profound lack of credibility. As she worked, Teresa called, her voice high-pitched and panicked. Maya, something's terribly wrong. A man came to my apartment today asking questions about you. What did he ask? Maya demanded, her pulse quickening instantly. Things like how we met, why I trusted you implicitly, and if I thought you were actually capable of handling the case. He claimed he was a reporter, but something about him didn't feel right at all. Maya clenched her jaw. That's Harper. They're trying to dig up dirt on me now to discredit the victory. Do not answer any more of his questions and notify me immediately if he comes back. Okay? Okay, Teresa said, her voice shaking violently. But Maya, this is genuinely getting scarier every day. What if they hurt someone close to us? They won't, Maya said firmly. We are not going to let them intimidate us into silence. The following week, the courtroom was packed to capacity for the closing arguments. Mr. Cole went first, attempting to paint Reynolds as a misunderstood, unfairly targeted landlord. His argument was filled with vague emotional appeals but lacked all legal substance. When it was Maya's turn, she stood confidently, radiating focused power. Her voice was steady and clear, reaching every corner of the silent room. Your Honor, this case has always been about one singular thing, justice. The overwhelming evidence presented over the course of this trial has exposed a continuous, undeniable pattern of deceit, manipulation, and exploitation by Mr. Reynolds and his hired team. From fabricated financial records to blatant witness intimidation, their tactics speak volumes about their utter lack of credibility. She paused, letting the magnitude of her words sink in. Teresa Carter is a hard-working, ethical mother who has done nothing but fight for her right to live in peace. She deserves justice, and today, this court has the monumental opportunity to deliver it. Maya returned to her seat, her heart pounding, and sat beside Teresa. The judge announced that he would issue a ruling in 3 days. As Maya and Teresa walked into the parking lot, a dark figure stepped out from the deep shadows. It was Harper. You really don't possess the sense to quit, do you? He said, his tone laced with heavy menace. You're playing a truly dangerous game, kid. Maya stopped, standing tall despite the cold fear that rippled through her body. The only dangerous game here is the one you and your client are playing, and you've already irrevocably lost. Harper smirked. We'll see about that. Before Maya could respond, headlights swept across the parking lot, and a black SUV pulled up silently. Harper turned and disappeared into the vehicle, leaving Maya and Teresa standing alone in the cold, silent night. 3 days later, the courtroom was packed again as Judge Patterson prepared to deliver his ruling. Maya sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands clasped tightly together. Teresa sat beside her, barely breathing. The judge cleared his throat. After reviewing all evidence and testimony presented in this case, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Teresa Carter. The room erupted into applause and cheers, but the judge raised his hand immediately for silence. Furthermore, this court will immediately refer Mr. Reynolds and his entire legal team for investigation into possible perjury, evidence tampering, and other gross professional misconduct. Tears of sheer, exhausting relief streamed down Teresa's face as she hugged Maya fiercely. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it." Maya smiled, her relief and pride mingling, but as she looked across the room and saw Mr. Cole hastily packing his briefcase, she knew the truth. This victory was only the commencement of her much larger fight for systemic justice. The courtroom victory was monumental, but for Maya, the true fight was far from concluded. While holding Teresa tightly, the palpable relief mixed with a lingering, philosophical sense of unease. Reynolds' legal defeat and the judge's punitive ruling were crucial wins, but they only addressed one piece of the puzzle. The broader system, the labyrinthine regulations that permitted greedy landlords like Reynolds to exploit countless defenseless tenants, still loomed large and untouched. That evening, she found her grandmother, Clara, waiting at home. "You were magnificent, Maya," Clara said, pulling her into a warm embrace. "I am immensely proud of the lawyer you have become." "Thank you, Grandma," Maya replied, sinking onto the sofa. "But I think this is just the launch. There are countless others like Teresa who possess neither the resources nor the knowledge to fight back against this corruption." Clara nodded, her face thoughtful and wise. "You've been gifted with a rare, powerful passion, Maya. Perhaps it is time to think about how you can channel that gift toward helping more people simultaneously." The next morning, Maya received a call from a local journalist, Tyler Jackson of the Tribune. He proposed a feature on her work, highlighting the Reynolds case and its wider implications for tenant rights. Maya hesitated. She intensely disliked being in the spotlight, but she realized that sharing the story widely could empower others to stand up for themselves. "Okay," she said cautiously, "but only if the focus stays firmly on the case and the systemic impact on tenants like Teresa." "Absolutely," Tyler agreed. "Let's schedule an interview." Later that week, the article ran, and it was more impactful than Maya had anticipated. The headline blared, "Tenant Victory Takes Down Corrupt Landlord. Maya Brooks Sparks Hope for Housing Rights Everywhere." The article detailed the trial, Reynolds' criminal tactics, and Maya's unrelenting fight for justice. The response was overwhelming. Maya's inbox flooded with dozens of emails and messages from people across the country, many sharing their own painful stories of housing injustice. One email stood out. "Dear Miss Brooks, my name is Laura Gonzalez. I've been fighting a battle exactly like Teresa's for over a year. Your story gave me the strength to continue. I can't afford a lawyer, but I desperately need your guidance." Maya stared at the screen, her mind racing. She wanted to help, but she was only one person. How could she possibly take on more cases while still maintaining her own life and studies? "Grandma, people are begging for my help," she admitted later that evening. "I want to do more, but I don't know how to physically manage it all." Clara sat beside her, her expression wise and calm. "You don't have to wage this war alone, Maya. There are people out there who share your convictions. It is time to build something much, much bigger than yourself." Maya spent the next few weeks strategically brainstorming ways to expand her impact. She reached out to local pro bono lawyers, community activists, and nonprofit organizations focused on housing rights. Slowly but surely, a concrete plan materialized. A grassroots initiative that would provide free legal aid and advocacy to tenants facing exploitation and illegal eviction. She called it the Justice Collective. Aaron jumped on board immediately, offering to handle all technological infrastructure. "We'll build the website, handle social media, everything," he promised excitedly. "This is going to explode into something massive." Teresa volunteered as well, eager to repay the debt of trust. "You saved my life, Maya," she said. "The least I can do is help you save others." Meanwhile, the fallout from Reynolds' arrest continued. News reports revealed he was facing additional charges, including tax evasion and racketeering. Several of his properties were seized by the authorities, and tenants who had been wrongfully evicted began to organize and speak out. But not everyone was happy about Maya's growing influence. One evening, as she worked late in the collective's new, small, donated office space, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Miss Brooks," the low, menacing voice said immediately. "You believe you've achieved something, but you have no comprehension of how deep this infrastructure of power runs. Walk away while you still retain your safety." Maya gripped the phone tightly. "Who is this?" The caller issued a low, chilling chuckle. "Let's just say I know precisely how to make persistent problems disappear. Consider this your final, absolute warning." The line went dead. Maya stared at her phone, her heart pounding. She immediately called Aaron and told him about the explicit threat. "That's certifiably insane," he declared. "We have to file a police report." "And say what?" Maya countered, frustrated. "That some anonymous coward told me to stop helping people? Without irrefutable proof, they won't do anything." Still, Aaron insisted. "You are deeply unsettling someone powerful, Maya. They are terrified of what you are building." Maya took a deep, centering breath, her resolve now ironclad. "Then I must be doing exactly the right thing." As the Justice Collective rapidly gained momentum, more stories of systemic abuse came to light. Families had been illegally forced out. Landlords manipulated leases. Tenants felt utterly powerless. The movement began to grow with dedicated volunteers stepping up to support the cause. But the threats didn't stop. Maya started noticing strange, unmarked vehicles idling near her house. One night, she found a crude, threatening note taped to her door. "Quit while you can." One evening, as she was leaving the office, she spotted Lucas Harper waiting. He was leaning casually against a lamppost, the familiar, infuriating smirk plastered on his face. "You've certainly made quite a name for yourself," he observed as she approached. "But you're poking at very large, vicious interests that hate being poked." Maya squared her shoulders, refusing to acknowledge the prickle of fear. "I am not afraid of you." Harper chuckled, a dry, unpleasant sound. "Perhaps you genuinely should be. People like me? We never lose." "Neither do I," Maya shot back, effortlessly sweeping past him. The threats only served as fuel for her determination. By the close of the year, the Justice Collective had successfully shielded dozens of families from eviction and exposed several unethical, predatory landlords. Maya's story continued to spread, inspiring others to fight back against injustice. But Maya knew the war was far from over. The deeper she dug, the more entrenched corruption she unearthed. As the movement grew exponentially, so did the number of calculated enemies she acquired. Yet she would not be intimidated, not now, not ever. The Justice Collective's success was historic, but with every passing week, the anonymous letters, the late-night hang-up calls, and the constant, chilling shadow of Lucas Harper guaranteed that her personal battle was only growing more perilous. The words of her mentor reminded her that she was fighting a sprawling war that stretched far beyond the boundaries of her initial case. One crisp evening, just after she had finished leading a packed session on tenant rights at the bustling local community center, her phone buzzed with an urgent priority call. It was Aaron. "Maya, we've got a critical problem," he stated, his voice tight with alarm, not just tension. "I was digging deep into Reynolds' defunct but still interconnected old financial network. There's a massive, fast-moving real estate transaction scheduled for first thing tomorrow morning. It's routed through Harmony Solutions, one of his oldest, darkest shell companies, partnered with a shadowy consortium of highly leveraged, ethically bankrupt investors." Maya's brow furrowed sharply. "What exactly is the play here?" Aaron explained the ruthless specifics. They're finalizing the purchase of an entire city block of Section 8 low-income housing. The immediate plan is mass eviction, displacing every single resident, and then a rapid conversion into high-end, exclusive luxury condominiums. It is the textbook definition of predatory gentrification, using Reynolds' exact, cruel playbook. If we let this contract be signed, dozens of families, vulnerable people, will be instantly rendered homeless. A cold nausea twisted in Maya's gut. Do we have the ironclad proof we need to legally freeze the deal? Not quite yet, Aaron confessed, sounding frustrated. But I have the precise address and time of the closing ceremony. It's a closed-door signing. If we can get in there, disrupt the meeting, and publicly blast their fraudulent plans, we might buy those families enough time to survive. The following morning, Maya, Aaron, and Teresa, acting as both moral compass and witness, arrived at the sleek, imposing downtown skyscraper. They were armed not with weapons, but with the damning stack of financial reports Aaron had worked through the night to compile. Their shared resolution was palpable. They were ready to confront the architects of displacement and expose the rotten core of the deal. As they entered the polished lobby, Maya's gaze snagged on a familiar figure. Lucas Harper, impeccably dressed and radiating smug confidence, leaned casually against the granite wall near the express elevators. He saw Maya and a slow, disdainful smirk spread across his face. Persistence, Brooks. I'll certainly concede you have that, he drawled, his tone patronizing. But attempting to derail this? You are hopelessly, utterly out of your depth this time. Maya closed the gap between them, her stance rigid, her voice slicing through the lobby air. Perhaps, she retorted, eyes fixed firmly on his. Or perhaps you and your entitled friends are finally about to witness your carefully constructed empire crumble. Harper let out a short, dismissive laugh. Go ahead, try your stunt. Good luck. You'll definitely need it. Maya didn't dignify the taunt with a response. She wheeled away, heading directly for the restricted floor where the conference room was located. Peering through the panoramic glass walls of the high-floor conference room, she saw the scene. A circle of powerful, gray-suited men gathered around an enormous mahogany table, their signatures hovering over stacks of closing documents. It was the moment of execution. Taking one steadying, deep breath that centered her resolve, Maya pushed open the heavy oak door and stepped across the threshold. The room instantly froze. The low hum of deal-making ceased, replaced by a profound, expectant silence as the investors collectively turned. To what do we owe this interruption, young woman? One of the senior partners inquired, his voice dripping with entitled irritation. Maya lifted the heavy folder in her hand, holding it like a shield. I am here, she declared, her voice ringing clear despite the luxury environment. To stop you from finalizing your plan to destroy dozens of people's lives. The men initially exchanged slightly amused, patronizing glances. They clearly viewed her as a minor annoyance. But Maya didn't wait for them to speak. She walked directly to the head of the table, slamming down multiple sets of Aaron's meticulously cross-referenced financial findings. As she began detailing, clearly and precisely, the intricate web of shell corporations and blatantly fraudulent practices underpinning the transaction, the cynical smirks vanished. Gentlemen, this transaction is not merely unethical, Maya emphasized, scanning their faces. It is explicitly illegal. If a single pen touches these papers, we will ensure that the media, the district attorney, and every regulatory body knows exactly how and why you operate. The air in the conference room became oppressively thick with fear and anger. One of the investors, visibly shaken by the specificity of her details, stammered, We need a moment to confer privately. Another, seemingly the toughest, leaned forward menacingly. You have absolutely zero jurisdiction here, kid. Get out of this room before we have security escort you out. Maya held her posture, unwavering. Call security. That's fine. But while they are walking me out, the full dossier of your crimes will be simultaneously delivered to major media outlets and, more importantly, to the Attorney General's Special Investigations Unit. This predatory meeting, she finished, her gaze sweeping the table, is effectively terminated. For a strained moment that felt like an hour, no one moved. Then, one of the elder statesmen among the investors sighed profoundly, defeated, and slowly rose. "She's right," he admitted, his voice low. "We cannot possibly absorb this level of legal and public exposure. We are pulling the deal." Following his lead, the others reluctantly started gathering their materials, some muttering curses, others shooting venomous glares at Maya as they sheepishly filed out, their high-stakes maneuver ruined. As the last of the retreating investors hurried past him, Lucas Harper materialized in the doorway, observing the wreckage of the deal. His expression was a fascinating mix of furious annoyance and grudging, almost visible admiration. "You genuinely do not know how to quit, do you?" he stated flatly. Maya turned to face him, her exhaustion masked by resolute calm. Her voice remained steady. "Not when the homes and stability of innocent people are being used as leverage for profit." For the first time, Harper's characteristic smirk faltered entirely. The swagger evaporated, and he offered her a small, tight nod, a gesture shockingly close to respect, before spinning on his heel and retreating into the corridor. The story of Maya's daring showdown in the penthouse office, fueled by anonymous leaks and public outrage, spread like wildfire across the city, instantly cementing her reputation as a fearless, uncompromising advocate for economic justice. The Justice Collective experienced an immediate, overwhelming outpouring of support. Donations soared, and passionate volunteers flooded their small office, eager to join the cause. The targeted block of low-income housing that Maya had snatched back from the abyss became an instant, powerful symbol of grassroots hope. Inspired tenants began vigorously organizing their own collective efforts, learning to wield their rights and protect their community. Maya, however, remained grounded. She knew this victory was merely one battle won, and the systemic war was far from over. She had internalized the hard truth. The system was not merely faulty, it was deeply, intentionally flawed, rigged to favor power and capital. For every predatory landlord like Reynolds, for every sophisticated investor scheme she managed to expose, countless others were already breeding in the shadows, waiting for their opportunity. Late one evening, sitting quietly with Clara and Teresa amidst the stacks of new case files, Maya allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. "It genuinely feels like we're barely scratching the surface," she confessed, her voice slightly tired. "There is an almost infinite amount of work left." Clara reached across the table, her eyes shining with unwavering pride. "You have fundamentally altered the landscape already, Maya. And more importantly, you are inspiring hundreds of others to find their courage and stand up beside you. That is the engine of authentic, lasting change." Teresa nodded slowly, her hand resting over her heart. "You didn't just win a case for me. You gave me my stability, my voice, my life back. You aren't just arguing legal points. You are instilling hope where there was only despair." A profound, quiet sense of enduring purpose settled over Maya. She smiled, energized. "Then I suppose we have no choice but to keep going." In the decades that followed, Maya Brooks evolved into a nationally renowned attorney and pioneering activist, leading a sweeping, nationwide movement dedicated to tenant rights and comprehensive housing reform. The Justice Collective flourished, growing from a humble local clinic into a potent national organization that successfully protected thousands of vulnerable families and meticulously rewrote outdated, unjust laws. And although the threats from those she challenged never completely subsided, Maya Brooks never once faltered. She had learned that the struggle for true justice demanded unrelenting tenacity, and it was never easy, but it was, without exception, always worthwhile. Because for every person like Teresa Carter who found the strength to tell their story and reclaim their dignity, the world, slowly but surely, became fundamentally brighter. Maya's enduring story became an indelible beacon, a permanent reminder that even against the steepest, most overwhelming odds, one dedicated individual could initiate a profound difference, and that the fight for justice was eternally worth waging.